Okay, welcome to the Procedural Anatomy Rig tutorial. This tutorial is going to just go quickly over how to start your sim, and maybe we'll make a second part that's kind of what to do after to modify your sim. But the user interface is where we'll start. So at our top level, you'll see this in the test scene, the Procedural Anatomy Rig, and for the most part, it's the same thing as the uh, what is it? This guy PAN import, but I think it's at the top level a little bit even simpler, and that's because a lot of the if you work in the same way that I've set it up here, you will get a lot of stuff for free. You don't have to use this. You can use the skeleton and things all on your own, whatever way you want. After the output, as in just whatever kind of geometry, but the rig, if you need to kind of just get something out, it's a great way to get started with that. Now, to start with, the character name, the current character name, current file for the character are here. Again, just mirroring the animation tool set, but we do still need the character's cache file from the model. So that's where we start. And then the animation as well. So you can see a few things here: animation index, name, version, your rest, your start end frames, and your increment. Something's happening there, but we'll look into that. The main thing though is the uh, we've loaded the animations on, and we've got Tommy's animation for this. Now, the main thing to pay attention to with this is that we've got our character name, which is here, just called name. This is name one. This one is anim name one and anim file one. The main thing we have to do is understand where we're going to be grabbing our animation uh, from, because we want to load a character separately from an animation. And right now, if we had multiple characters, if Tommy and Jane and Bob or whatever, there's three characters in here. We'd load three characters with one animation, and it'll only be Tommy's animation with right there. So we do need to write an expression as well too, and it's a pretty simple one. It's ch and then name, and we just have the backticks around the name, and then that will enable the character name to be chosen. And it's CHS, of course, for a string. Haha, silly me. And we have a few different other ones: frame increment, output version. You can see that the version would be version 1 or version 2, and this is the output. So it'll be what all of your files save under: version 2 output, version 3 output. We can skip caches here. I will wait to go into that because it is just skipping the caching of each one, but there are certain nuances to optimization that you can kind of get away without touching these, and those are probably more important because they are simpler. But the main thing is that the node is actually it's editable. I don't recommend editing the inside of it unless there's just some settings you want to modify. But here is the inside of the rig. It's a lot of stuff, but it works top to bottom, and we have the same kind of automate feature as below. The input is just loaded in here, and maybe we'll, boom, there, lots of space. All of the different inputs are loaded. The animation is loaded. The model skeleton is deformed. We can cache that. The muscle simulation is here. We can cache that. We use the tissue collision geometry to renumber and recache the muscles and the bones to make sure they're all back together so they can collide with the tissue, and then tissue can go back onto your character's skin and output in various different ways. First one's basically a display. The rest of them are just different components of that, and that can then go into any kind of other output you'd like, some kind of like a Alembic or USD or anything like that, to go to any other application if you want to do that, or render it. Lots of different things you can do with it afterwards. The main thing is, though, we start up with the bones. You don't really have to do anything with this. The only other thing to understand is if you want to load from disk, and I don't do this by default. So this is actually not working by default, and there's a good reason for it. It's caches do take up gigabytes, so save as much as you can. But the other main thing is that when you save, and usually this should be displaying one. I'm not sure why that's not right now. I'm sure it'll be something silly, but the basics are you're incremented by one frame at a time. And for muscle simulation, usually you'll have to do sub steps, which mean you have to simulate in between the frames to get to the next frame. So when you have cache, it only has the whole frames in there unless you put more increments in underneath it, and then your uh, disk space goes way up. You use a lot more disk space basically because you're caching more of it. But because this is specifically very light animation, we're doing that, and then again, if we come right in here, way in, oh, very close, too close, one frame at a time. This animation automatically animates between the frames because it's being interpolated at a higher frame rate, which is great. It should be very stable. Uh, you know, big quotations on that one. But anyway, the main thing is that if it is stable and if it's this is turned off, you can get a higher fidelity cache out of your muscles because this is uh, using the rig and deforming based off of a higher fidelity format than the cache. For muscles and everything else associated with that, the it's a lot of simming, a lot of saving. So up to you, your discretion. The muscles I tend to sim, and then there we go. Send it back to the start frame. The muscles I tend to sim and save. The tissue collision cache, I tend to save it. Honestly, you could turn the muscles off, uh, and you have your very light simulation here, and then just save it here instead. Lots of options. I do both, but the main thing is you don't want to have this turned off and this turned off. The muscles in the tissue collision cache, one of them needs to be cached at the very least, because you need to have something cached ahead of going into the next solve, which is the skin solve. And you can see this is the tissue solve, which if we look at the wireframe, basically just shows you it's a lot of different tetrahedral meshes, and it's a lot easier to see if you can see inside and see that there's a lot of points inside, and not just on the surface, but inside the mesh and everything like that. So we're doing a tetrahedral mesh for the tissue simulation, and then going to the skin, which because there's no tissue cache, you can't see. But yeah, the skin is visible now, and there we go, back. And from there, whoops, basically it can go out. But you have control over the Vellum solvers with that, and I've only used Vellum in this instance. The constraints and everything are all set up for both of them. But yeah, that is the main thing. With this one, you can modify most of this and you shouldn't have any problems. Most of the settings don't need to be changed, assuming you set the mass on your character's output. But you can go back and set that again. We have minimum. We have like a force set muscle mass and tissue mass. These will be complete overrides, and they're not advised. It should be correct based off of your mass settings, but um, if you do have problems, like things just starting to just go hits, like the sim, everything just seems to fall apart and just go straight to the floor, that means your mass is too high, so you can lower it. But we're gonna come back to that at some point and make a better option for that. The flex values you can change as well too. We give you access to this. Um, Not recommended to change. They are per muscle settings, and these are going to be uh, retooled at some point. But for the most part, this is like a very. It's better if this is a black box test, and we'll see what you need basically after you try with the black box. See if you need anything more than that. But anyway, yeah, that's for the most part it. The other main thing is the automate network. The main thing we're doing here is just saying we're getting our work items. I've turned off the cache for that. These are the literal switches for if this is caching or not. So if you don't switch this off, the skeleton will still cache, but it won't be loaded from disk. So this will cache no matter what if that other one is turned on. But it'll still like not load it from disk. So when it goes into the next step, it'll like just be a waste of time and space on your hard drive. So make sure you turn these off if you don't need them as well too. But you can see that very straightforward to cache. These are what do it. These skips actually do something else. I included this, and maybe it'll instead sometime we'll just switch to that completely. But they get scheduled, and that's what these ones are up here. So if you wanted to see the skip caches, if those are turned on, basically those will be queried and you know disabled or enabled to output for that. And that's about it. You just select the node, and then you can do the same thing, cook node, Shift G, and go on with that and simulate your character.